for our next guest, Stephanie Grisham. She is the Chief of Staff to the First Lady, as well as the Communications Director, former White House Press Secretary as well. Stephanie, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, and congratulations on the new baby.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. We have a lot to get to and not a ton of time, so let's get into it. You've seen, I'm sure, some of the headlines from night one of the RNC, describing day one as ominous, a focus on grievance instead of uplift. Will we see a continuation of that theme from the First Lady or no?
Well, I would have to disagree with those words. I think that people were very passionate about this country. The Republicans have been saying that all along. We want everything to be positive and uplifting. The First Lady is not known for being ominous, so her speech will be definitely very uplifting and positive. I would say it's very forward-looking. She definitely lays out some of the things she wants to do with Be Best in the next 4 years. She also reflects on some of her favorite moments as First Lady, which there are many. And then I think she makes a really good case to the American people about why it's so important that her husband continue on as our president for the next 4 years.
I want to ask about Be Best in a second, but first, the last time we talked about the First Lady's convention speech, she was not a First Lady. She was a candidate, Melania Trump, if you will. And in 2016, of course, her convention speech was criticized for plagiarism of Michelle Obama. What is your team doing differently this time around to make sure that doesn't happen again in the writing process?
Well, I think that it's been very, very clear that over the last 3.5 years, Mrs. Trump has done nothing but learn and grow in this role, and she's been doing a fantastic job at that. We've been working really hard the last 3 weeks. I can tell you that every word in this speech is from her. It's very authentic, and it's going to come from the heart. So we're really excited for people to hear from her. It will be one of her longer speeches that she's given, and I think the American people will be really excited to hear some of the things that she's going to say.
I want to talk about the setting, too, but before that, on Be Best, this is something that, obviously, as you know, the First Lady has been talking about ever since she and her husband came into office, this campaign on online bullying. Plenty has been said, and you have defended her for what some critics see as hypocrisy as it relates to her husband's online behavior. But I want to ask you about something else. These online conspiracy theorists, right, are a natural extension or an extreme extension that can be violent and dangerous of the online bullying that Mrs. Trump talks about, particularly when it comes to a group that's been in the headlines, QAnon. Does she disavow, given her Be Best campaign, Stephanie, does she disavow QAnon?
I haven't talked to her about that specifically, but I think there's constantly this misperception that it's about online bullying, which of course gets tied to the president. It's about online safety, and it's about teaching children that there are predators out there online and that they need to really watch out who they're talking to online and what they're doing. And it's also about children who spend hours and hours and hours online instead of going out into the air and playing with friends and socializing. So it's really not about bullying per se. It can be mean, it can be manipulative. She has said that over and over again. But it's about online safety as a whole because children are in such a technical world now.
That's a fair point. Clearly, conspiracy theorists would play into the issue of online safety and safety in the real world. You say you haven't talked to her about QAnon. Do you think she should disavow it?
I think that's something I would never say what I think she should or shouldn't do. She's the First Lady. It's something I'm happy to talk to her about. But I think it would be safe to say that if there's anything that could be harmful to children online, she's going to be against that.
The backdrop of this speech tonight, as you know, is going to be in the Rose Garden. This announcement of the renovation at the Rose Garden, it's been newly sort of refurbished, was made after the Jacksonville sort of convention portion was canceled. Was the renovation intended to be a backdrop for the First Lady's speech? Is that why it was undertaken?
No, not at all. She's been working on that renovation for easily 6-7 months, talking to horticulturists and architectures and historians. The Rose Garden was in need of this renewal. The trees needed to be replanted in other places around the grounds because they weren't giving the roses enough shade. So this was something that was well needed. It will make the garden healthier for people to enjoy for years to come. And she talked to a lot of historians, and it's back towards the 1962 bunny melon design. This has been in the works for months and months and has nothing to do with tonight's speech.
Why pick that spot, Stephanie, given all the questions and the entanglements as it relates to the Hatch Act and a lot of questions and concern about potential violations of the Hatch Act when it comes to holding such a partisan political event like the convention speeches on White House grounds? She had the country at her disposal as far as where she might have wanted to give this speech. Why do it there?
There's a few reasons. Number one, it is their home. This is their home. It's the people's house, but it's also their home. And so she thought it would be really nice to deliver tonight's speech from their home. She's also not subject to the Hatch Act. And then with COVID right now, it's really difficult to safely get out there and travel. And the footprint, of course, that the president or the first lady has when they travel is huge when you consider Secret Service and the people who have to travel with them. So it was very cost efficient. But again, this is their home, and she's very, very proud of this home. She's been working tirelessly to help renovate and preserve the White House, which she'll be showcasing tonight in her speech.
You mentioned and you point out that she is exempt from the Hatch Act. Employees, staffers such as yourself are not, which I think is where the issue comes in. You also mentioned
Correct.
COVID precautions being a part of this, and yet there will be an audience, as I understand it, for the First Lady's speech tonight of about 50 or so people in the Rose Garden.
Correct. And they will
Why
all
even
be
have
tested.
people there at the Rose Garden, given the concern? They're going to be tested, socially distanced, I assume. Who's in the audience? Who's coming?
There's a variety of people in there, friends, family, people who have helped her with her Be Best campaign, some members of the administration in terms of the cabinet. So it'll be a great group. It's people that she actually wants to thank for always being around and supporting her, and she's very proud of tonight's speech. So she, like the president, likes to have people in front of her when she speaks. So I think that everybody will be pleasantly surprised.
On the news of day aspects here, a couple of questions for you. There's this reporting that Peter Alexander, my colleague who covers the White House, referenced from Yashar Ali, who talks about how Stephanie Winston Wolkoff has written a book, apparently, according to sources familiar with this book, in which the First Lady was apparently recorded. She was taped saying disparaging things about Ivanka Trump and others in the Trump family. Have you heard the First Lady say such things? And I want to give you an opportunity to respond here.
Of course. No, I've never heard Mrs. Trump say anything disparaging about the family. They're a close-knit family. She's talked about them many times publicly. I've heard a little bit about this book. I don't know much about it. It sounds like it's just another one of those books that unfortunately people are writing. And, you know, if there were any recordings taken, it's really unfortunate to take advantage of somebody's trust like that while being a friend. But I don't know much about the book. We're focused on the work we're doing.
And the work, of course, relates to what we're talking about here, which is the speech tonight. You said something, Steph. You referenced how you think people sometimes mix up her Be Best campaign with her husband's sort of false claims, online bullying, things that he said that are racist and sexist and so on. Can you talk about how the First Lady navigates that when it... Excuse me?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think you said perceived as racist. I think people would just call them some of the things he said racist. That is not actually my question. My question is how she navigates that when it comes to the themes that you're saying she wants to talk about tonight. Her husband will be in the audience, and yet, to some, he may be, in fact, the exact person who needs to hear that message the most.
Well, I mean, then it's a good thing his wife is up there talking. Look, they are married, and it's astonishing to me that it has to be constantly about both of them. She is doing her speech tonight. She is talking about children and what she's been doing for children and what she wants to continue doing for children. She is focused on her work as First Lady, and she believes that this president should continue to be the president for the next 4 years. So she's going to make that case. I would really hate to see if anybody was thinking she should be sitting there speaking to an audience of one. She's speaking to the American people. That's who the people want to hear from her, and that's who she wants to talk to.
Before I let you go, the First Lady, I understand, voted by mail in the Florida primary. Will she do so again in the presidential primary in November? And will you also vote by mail again after I think you did so in 2016?
I haven't talked to her about that at all, and I guess it will depend on where I am in the country.
But you feel confident in the voting by mail system here?
I haven't talked to her about that. I wouldn't know.
I'm asking you personally.
Oh, I am confident in it, yes.
Okay, that is different than what we've heard from President Trump, but you're saying that is your personal view? Is that your view as an official, top official to First Lady Melania Trump?
In my personal opinion, I have never had any issues with it. I think the things that the president has brought up are very, very valid, but if you're asking me if I've had personally any problems with it, I have not.
Okay, and just a quick note on that, too. There is no, of course, as you're likely aware, widespread voter fraud that's been reported, any evidence of that. Stephanie Grisham talking a lot about the First Lady and a lot to cover ahead of her speech tonight. We really appreciate you being on MSNBC. We hope to have you back.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steph. We've got a